The reason for this meeting, very briefly, is to give an opportunity to editors of science to review the year that has just gone by and look forward to the year that is coming ahead. These opportunities used to be there, for editors in the past, but I think Corona and social media has kind of killed them or rendered them not as common as they used to be. So we thought that it would be nice for editors to meet and talk, especially for a year like this, where we have had very serious challenges in the coverage of science and in the coverage of Corona. Before we called the meeting to order, we were talking about the Omicron variant and how there is quite a bit of misinformation around it, which leads some people not to take the protocols seriously. So this is an opportunity to review things like those and have an invigorating discussion, and then look forward to 2022. And to help us do this, we have brought together 3 speakers, whom I shall be introducing to you in a short while. I would like to recognize 3 of my colleagues who are in the room. I would like to recognize Christophe Itayezu, all the way from Rwanda. Thank you, Christophe, and welcome. And I would also like to recognize my colleague, Michael, all the way from South Africa. Thank you very much, Michael, and feel free to participate in this meeting. The rest of us, may I kindly request that we introduce ourselves in the chat. Just state your name and your title and the media house you are affiliated to. So without much ado, I would like to invite Nduta Waweru to open this meeting for us. Nduta Waweru is a journalist with over 12 years experience and in different media houses. She currently is a feature sub-editor with the People Daily. The People is one of the big newspapers in Kenya, big in terms of circulation in Kenya. And she's the co-editor of Science Magazine, which is a publication by the Media for Environment, Science, Health, and Agriculture. A media trainer, actually I could add a seasoned media trainer. Nduta is a Women in News 2021 fellow and a Young African Leader Initiative alumni for 2017. Nduta, we are very happy to have you here, and we look forward to listening to you on the topic, the challenges of covering science in 2021. And please, anyone, if you have questions or comments to give after Nduta has done her presentation, please go ahead and give them. Feel free to do it either through the chat or directly to her. And also, in the course of our presentation, if you feel like asking a question, you are free to do so. Don't hesitate. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nduta.
So good morning, everyone. As it has been said, my name is Nduta Waweru, and I am going to talk about the challenges that we've had this year in terms of covering science. And one of the biggest challenges that we've had is that a lot of our coverage in 2021, as was in 2020, was the focus on COVID-19. So when the COVID-19 came through to the world and to the country, and of course East Africa and everything, there was a lot of uncertainty, there was a lot of curiosity, there was a lot of attempts to try and understand what this disease is. And because of that, there was a lot of focus on COVID-19, what it is, what it means, how it will impact communities, how it will impact health, what are the number of cases, and so on and so forth. So for the last 2 years, that has been the main topic of our science pages, COVID-19. So the danger of this in terms of science coverage was a lot of other science stories disappeared. So in different publications, different people tried to see ways of, even if you're covering COVID-19, how do we see the impact of COVID-19 on other science topics? So you'd find, for example, publications ran things such as COVID-19 and malaria, COVID-19 and HIV, COVID-19 and diabetes, and so on. So those topics, as much as they were about other health conditions, it also talked about, it was still focusing on the intersection of the diseases and COVID-19. The other thing as well in relation to COVID-19 was that there was a danger of low quality stories. As we were trying to cover a lot of COVID-19 stories, some people, some reporters were removed from their usual dockets to actually go and cover COVID-19 and other health related stories. So this means there was not in-depth quality of the stories that was to be covered. Christoph, go to the next page. Yes. So not a lot of people, not a lot of reporters, those who've never covered COVID-19 before, those who've never covered health before, they ended up covering COVID-19 and health, but with very low quality stories, in the sense of there was a gap in determining who the specialists were. There was a gap in basically understanding what the pandemic is and what it meant and all these things. So that was one of the main issues. We lost a lot in terms of covering environmental stories as well. Not so many people covered that. Even recently with the COP26 in November, the coverage wasn't very focused, but also due to many other reasons. It was held in Glasgow. Very few African reporters went to Glasgow to find out what this is all about. Was there an opportunity? We don't know. Was it an impact of COVID-19 protocols that some people are not allowed in Glasgow? Those are some of the things that came up. The other challenge was no specialized science reporters. This one is a structural issue across a lot of our media houses. So any reporter could be assigned to write a story on science, which results in quality issues and misinformation. If you don't understand science as a reporter, then you will not be able to communicate the message as required. So in the end, a lot of work, editors had to do a lot of work, not only in assigning stories, but also in making sure that whatever the reporter has covered is actually accurate, is actually does not carry any disinformation or misinformation in that sense. So the fact that there is no specialized science reporter means that we are losing out on a lot of opportunities to actually talk about science as we should. Next page, Christoph. As with any other channel, any other story, any other coverage across the board, we have had to deal with disinformation and misinformation. Social media, definitely, we've seen a lot of stories online about any science story. At the moment, it's a lot on COVID-19 and very recently on the Omicron variant, but misinformation is there and disinformation is there. And in the end, there is a gap in terms of the ability of reporters to detect the kind of misinformation that is being passed around on social media, which means as well as media houses or as editors, we need to find ways to actually make our reporters digital literate. That means, what do you see online? Do you know what it means? Is it true? Is it accurate? Is there data supporting it? Is there evidence supporting it? If not, chances are that there would be misinformation in our reportage as well. I'll give an example. Just last week, there was a story about our research institute called KEMRI. I think all media houses had the story, how KEMRI had released research results of influenza in the country. And the thing is, everybody, almost all media houses carried the story. And it became such a viral story online because everybody is complaining about a cold that is currently going on in Nairobi. but the reporting wasn't so accurate that the organization had to release a report, press release, to say that while there is some truth to the story, it is not 100% true, because the sample size was too small to say that there is flu across the country. And then there is also the timeline of the report of the research of the sampling, which was in September to November, but it was reported as if it happened in December. So there was a link of causation and correlation, which now created a whole issue about it. So currently everybody is just wondering, why didn't the media houses call KEMRI? If you have such a report, why couldn't you call the organization and find out more about it? Tell me more about this influenza that is currently in the country. What was the sample sizes? So those are the things that now make people feel like we as reporters, we're not doing our due diligence in making sure that we are portraying the correct information. And as I've said there, a simple mistake could be used to discredit science. So if you're not giving the correct information, if you're not providing all the evidence, if you're not involving the experts to talk about these things, if you're not involving the experts to highlight more, what exactly are you presenting to the people? You know, that kind of a thing. There is also an issue with how to make science resonate with the readers. There is still a problem in terms of simplifying complex science issues. So if you are reporting something as complex as virology, for example, as complex as the carbon emission in environment, and you're not able to break it down into something that the common person could understand, then you're not communicating. So it is important that we try and find the right people, the right experts to come and simplify these concepts. Sometimes there are so many research results that are being released. If you're not able to find somebody who will explain to you what the research is, even if you try and write it in your own terms, in your own language, chances are that you might not be able to communicate well to the public. So there is an importance in trying to making sure that we simplify concepts without watering it down as reporters and as editors as well. In terms of language use, this was mainly in terms of vernacular. How are you communicating COVID-19 to the public in vernacular? How are you communicating the new HIV research results to the people in local language? What are the terms are you going to use? How low are you going to go in terms of explaining these concepts so that people understand that it is a complex science issue, but in a very, very simple and easy way. Next page, Christophe. The other challenge in science is there is no bigger picture in coverage. By bigger picture, I mean we have the tendency of just covering something once and that's it, until something else comes up that is related to that story that we've covered. We don't do follow-ups. An example would be, a lot of times we might wait for things such as World Malaria Day, for example, and then we only cover malaria that particular time. World HIV Day, AIDS Day is December 1st. That is what we usually do. We wait for the big moments to talk about the big stories. But between the big stories, there is a lot of other things that come up. For example, one of the things we've covered in the People Daily is the prevention to mother to child transmission of HIV. So already that is what we covered on December 1st, for example. But between December 1st and December 1st, 2021 and December 1st, 2022, definitely there would be a lot of changes in between the PMTCT situation in the country. There could be a new research coming out. Now there could be new other things added to the transmission, mother-to-child transmission basis. For example, these days we don't only focus on HIV, mother-to-child transmission. We focus on HIV, we focus on syphilis, and we also focus on hepatitis transmission. So if we wait until 2022, what are we going to talk about? Like we are going to miss out on all these things. If syphilis, for example, has come up with there's a new thing around syphilis transmission, there's a new thing around hepatitis transmission, then we might lose that because we are only waiting until December 1st for the next coverage. So there's a lot of stories that disappear. Yes, Chacha?
No, I was just about to say you have 3 minutes. Thank you. Wonderful stuff. Proceed.
Okay, then let me just rush then. In some cases, the media houses cannot do the follow-up, either due to funding or staff. So people just wait until they're like the next opportunity, then that is what we'll cover. There is also a lot of science stories that we're not covering in terms of what are the research that is coming out. There is a lot of research coming out. So how are we as media houses prioritizing this? Are we trying to find, do we know where to find this information? How do you sift through it? How do you interact with the data so that you can figure out which science story is not more important, but should be prioritized before another one? You know, those kinds of things that should come into the editorial aspect of the process. Christoph? There is also a relationship between the experts and the media. With the coverage of COVID-19, a lot of people were afraid of being misquoted. Others were not available because they were also in the mix of trying to figure out how this disease is coming about and what impact it has. So in the end, a lot of reporters had very few people to concentrate on. So if you're willing to comment, if you're even a general doctor, for example, and you can comment on something on COVID-19, you'll probably get coverage if the reporter did not find a virologist or an epidemiologist to talk about the disease. There is also issues in terms of which expert should you go for. There is also questions about media people who have misquoted a reporter before, an expert before, and that expert does not want anything to do with that media house. You call them and it's like, hi, I am from this media house, and then they're like, no comment at all. I'm not talking to the media house, kind of a thing. So that messed up things. Finally, editorial policies. Sometimes in terms of broadcast, in terms of publication, some science stories get dropped so that other news of the day get the space. So this means we lose out on covering important science stories because either some media houses do not value science, or they feel like the story of the day is more important or more urgent than whatever science story you are trying to publish. I think that's my final page. Yes, thank you very much for listening to me and for the time. I welcome all questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nduta. Thank you very much. Wonderful stuff. If I may just say that I have picked a lot from you, and 3 of the most outstanding things you've said about the challenges of covering science this year. One of them was lack of specialization, the rush to cover an outbreak of a pandemic that without the requisite preparation for journalists, because generally some of them were covering politics, others were covering other things, and then COVID comes and they are sent to cover a highly complicated issue, and that was a challenge. Secondly, because of the outbreak of COVID, the avalanche of news in that respect, there were stories that were not covered, and it's really saddening when I hear you say, for example, that COP26 was not covered as well as it ought to have been, partly because of travel restrictions and other things. And of course, the challenge of making science resonate with audiences. Anytime that a complex topic like that is ripe for coverage, I think people switch off because they assume, like you say, that that is the remit of experts. So thank you very much. And people, please, if you have any questions, prepare them. I think in the interest of time, we are going to go straight to Hillary. Sorry, I was about to say Henry. We are going to go straight to Hillary. And it's my pleasure to introduce Hillary Bainemigisha. He's a journalist and a reporter and an editor with a new vision of long standing with the Vision Group. He is a senior content producer, which is these days, of course, a lofty definition for a senior editor. He's a senior editor at the Vision Group, and he's been a health journalist since 2005. That is really a long time, and I'm sure he has. He wouldn't object to my saying that he has had radio and newspaper programs around science issues, including that of love. He's a trainer and a mentor, and of course, always a science journalist. Hillary, it's my pleasure to hand over the microphone to you so that you speak to us specifically on the challenges that you faced or other editors have faced covering COVID-19 this year. Over to you, Hillary.
Yes, thank you, Mita. That was a good introduction. Yes, I've been in this field for some time. I'm about to retire. I didn't say that I'm 55 years old. So sometimes when I talk of my age, I get taken seriously. So I hope you take me seriously. But the other thing is that when the COVID broke out, I was handed the charge of being the head of the task force at our media house. And our media house has got 5 platforms. We have the print newspaper, we have the radio, we have the TV, we have the digital, which is the website. And so we were covering this on all our platforms, and I was involved in all this, and it was a difficult time, which I would like to share with you. Some of them were okay, similar to what was presented by Waweru. And so, in the interest of time, I can jump in so fast. First of all, it was a new disease. And it was a disease which came slowly. Like in Uganda, it took time to reach, but we could hear about this disease from far. We didn't, at some time, we were told it will have to come, it will have to spread. So it took on interest. Now, when it took interest, it was new to us, but our audiences expected us to explain. And it was also new not only to us, but also to doctors who are always saying, you wait, it's a new disease, we are still finding out. So there was that kind of newness and ignorance that then depicted journalists as not knowing, and yet the sources were also not willing to comment because they were not sure of what would happen. But there was hunger for information because they were opposing groups, one saying it's a gimmick to make money, the gimmick to kill Africans, a gimmick, a warfare strategy gone wrong between US and the Chinese. Others were saying, no, Africans, our weather, it will not come, it will not survive here. So there was hunger for information, and the information was varied. And you wouldn't know which is the right source, you wouldn't know which is the wrong source, but there was hunger for information. And then those too many sources of information. In science, we have what we call qualified sources, the sources you can trust. WHO, which kept on telling us, but what WHO was saying was being contradicted by what we would see on social media, what we would see in other website stories. There were actually a strong force in the US saying, no, there is WHO is not speaking the truth. Even Trump, who was a qualified source, was saying, no, you can just take some few drugs and you'll be fine. So, and Trump, has expert advisors, very senior scientists. So you'd wonder now who is speaking what. We started this year with general information about COVID already because we had lockdowns. So we started the year with some information about COVID. But there was still hunger, the sources were still there, and we got another lockdown. So the lockdown had the following challenges. First of all, there was limited movement that were well talked about. Now, limited movement for us meant that we got stories through phone. Because we had a challenge of exposing our journalists to infection by sending them out. Even the sources were not willing to receive them because contact was discouraged. Now, when you get information on phone, you cannot verify. And we had a challenge. There was a lot of money for COVID, and so people would say, "This isolation unit is so full. I need more money," but you can't verify. So you go by his word or her word. Sometimes it wouldn't be full. We are lacking oxygen here. People are dying. So you go by their word. So there was no verification, which is a vital journalistic strategy. There was also a problem of observation. There needed to be observational reporting, but you could not send a journalist to a COVID treatment center to observe. That was risky. Even we only depended, when we got stories from inside the isolation centers, we depended on our own journalists who are sick and taken there. So they would report to us from there. But they would be confined and so reporting from a confined space. So it was not possible to send a journalist to do observation on a more versatile space. Then many government institutions were operating at 10%. So even for non-COVID stories, it was difficult because most of staff was operating from home. And with government, it meant actually no operation at all. So we depended on taking sources by their word. It also increased our cost of business. In Uganda, at one time, there were no taxis and no border. So we used our own vehicles of the company to dispatch journalists. And you see, the COVID was just one of the things. The other departments were working. So we were competing for few vehicles, and the vehicles would delay journalists. And also, because vehicles took a lot of money, so the cost of business increased. But against the situation where our income had fallen, we did not have a lot of buyers. Most of our vendors were gone. We also sell a lot of papers to government institutions which had closed. So we actually got a terrible slump in revenue. But yet the cost of running the paper had increased. So you could see that as a journalist, you had to make a choice between having to go for the story at such high expense, knowing that the people who are buying the paper were not many. And when taxis came back, they were operating at half capacity, so they doubled their fares. Still, the cost of getting one story became double at the time when revenue was shrinking. And when revenue shrank, there were threats of laying off staff, and some media houses were laying off staff, actually laid off. So there was tension in staff over job security. So with such a situation, it's difficult to motivate anyone to work. People who thought, and then at my media house, we sent a certain percentage of workers on forced leave because we couldn't afford to maintain all of them. Now, those who are sent on forced leave were disgruntled. When they came back, they had this sense of, oh, so I am very low in pecking order. So if you want to send me for a risky story, yet I'm the one who is always cut off when a problem comes. I think you understand the impact. So that impact also affected us. Then I go back to this confusing science. Before, there was so much hype over COVID, which is killing, which is very lethal. But yet the death rates were not scaring. They were like 0.05. COVID was killing very few people of those it got. it delayed to come in Uganda, and for some reason, Kenya was more affected than us. Europe was more affected than Uganda. So it was difficult to scare people. There were theories of invisibility because maybe of our climate, of our food, or of our type of genes. And so the only seriousness that happened was in June during the second wave, when people started seeing coffins, people started seeing even able people, doctors, professors, political leaders dying, cultural leaders dying of COVID. Now people took it seriously. Before on radio, people would ask you and say, but I have not heard anybody dying. What are you talking about? This is a political scheme, because for us, we were in election time. It was taken as if government doesn't want people to congregate because it doesn't want the opposition to be able to campaign. So you could see the context in which now COVID made it difficult. So some journalists were taken as liars or people who are creating a storm in a teacup. We also had doctors who are not sure, not willing to comment. And then there were experts also on the opposition side. If you look at vaccination, in America, when they opened it, more than 50% doctors refused to go for it. Even scientists, even here in Uganda, some doctors said, let me wait, because the science that led to this vaccination was a bit wanting. So it was confusing for the journalists to
Hello, is it me or have we lost Hillary?
if only so few people have died, can't I be in the herd immunity people who don't vaccinate? And yet government was calling for vaccination. So it was that kind of confusing. Then the other problem was the local language. And I don't know, Kenya has a national language of Swahili, which everybody seems to know. I don't know, maybe because they eat a lot of ugali, but I tried to eat ugali and I still failed to learn Swahili. Our Swahili is poor, so we have different languages. Now at the New Vision, we have the New Vision English version. Okay, our literacy in English is commendable, but not very high. Now we had to break the stories in local languages. Like at the New Vision, we have 5 different local language media outlets: newspapers, radios, TVs in one language, in Nyankore in the west, Luganda in the center, Luo in the north. We also had Ateso for Nairo Hamai. We also have a radio in West Nile, Radio 1, which was communicating in the Lugbar and other West Nile languages. So you had to get this science and break it down, looking for equally meaningful words. So as Wawel had said, how do you say variants in a local language to mean the same thing? How the infection process, when you start using our defense system, the macrophages, the white blood cells, you cannot put it in a local language and it fails to confuse people. The whole virology is difficult to translate. It is easier for the English people. So that was a challenge of local language, similar local language references. Then
Hi, Hillary, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yes, yeah, okay. We had a problem with contacts, the government or officials. Some of them, we gave them columns to write, but they got too busy. Then we had corruption. There was a lot of money. You see, the other thing on coronavirus, it has a lot of dimensions. It had the health angle, the social angle, economic angle, political angle. So we never had the problem of poor science. We sent for a science story, we sent the right person. But the problem was there was a lot of money and the people had misused it and they were unwilling to get in touch with journalists. Then we set a lot of staff to work from home. Home has intermittent power. Now internet would go on and off. There were home interruptions of children and other stuff. and we don't interact as a team. Then we had curfew, which shortened working hours and made it difficult to chase stories to the end. We also had cure claims from herbs and herbalists. And those would actually want economic gain, so they would influence our journalists to start writing or claiming cure claims. Then eventually we even had COVID, which came out of a herbal cure. So it was confusing. Which one should I talk about? Which one should I not talk about? Then we had protected information. For instance, Uganda decided to start its own studies on vaccination, but it said on vaccine development, but it said it received a lot of resistance because they said we didn't have capacity. So they told us not to write about this because it would attract people to come and sabotage. But in the end, we don't know whether we did the right thing because the later claims of corruption came in. We don't know whether they are trying to get us off so that they eat the money. Because later we were buying rats for laboratory at 7 million Uganda shillings per rat. And such things were not easy to verify. But in the end, we had sources that were not willing to talk. We had information we were not allowed to expose. Then, of course, we had unethical practices by some of our journalists. For example, patients, privacy, someone would die and a big person, and then the stories would actually, you would see intruding on a person's privacy, but intended to communicate to people to get scared and do soaps. We also had people getting influenced, maybe with money, to write about cure claims, about places where they can go and get these herbal for cure. Maybe I can stop there. I would have explained much more, but these challenges were surmounted in some way, but others remained as usual in science journalism, and especially for new pandemics like this, and one which is expected for a long time. It's a learning process as we go on. Learning process. We keep learning, education doesn't fail. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Wow, Hilary, thank you. Thank you so much. Spoken like a frontline soldier. All those challenges. I actually knew that there were challenges reporting COVID-19, but I didn't know there were that many. So many so that you've not even exhausted them in this conversation. I'm really sorry because of that time constraint. We started a little late. And I wish to suggest that we could extend by another 15 or so minutes for those who are available and who are willing to stay on, because I want to kind of change this conversation now. You remember Nduta and Hilary have both spoken about covering science and COVID-19, and specifically about the missed stories. We feel that some of the stories that were missed were in the area of HIV, which is an area where the project that has sponsored this call specifically works in. And to help us make sense of that topic is a great guy known as Moses Nsubuga, Supercharger. Supercharger was a nickname that eventually became his name. He has shown me his passport and the name is actually there. So it is not an alias, it is a real name, Supercharger. He's a person openly and positively living with HIV since 1994. He is an advocate for quality HIV health and adherence services. He heads Joint Adherent Brothers and Sisters Against AIDS, an organization whose acronym is JABAZA, a community-based organization for the literacy about HIV treatment, prevention, and research. Moses is a member of a number of organizations, which include HIV Cure Africa Acceleration Partnerships, Global Gene Therapy Initiative, AIDS Clinical Trials Group, the Amsterdam Institute for Global Health and Development, and the International Network for Strategic Initiatives in Global HIV Trials. Supercharger was the AVAC Fellow for 2017. He's not a scientist, just for me to clarify. He is not a scientist, but knows what is happening in that field with respect to HIV. And that's why we have him with us today to share some of it in layman's language. And Supercharger, please, it's a pleasure to have you here. And please welcome and talk to us. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank you for the great work that you do all over the world to share those important stories, to empower and educate our communities. I'll not introduce myself. He has already done an amazing job. I'll first of all apologize. I'm en route to the settlement camp in the northern Uganda. I'm traveling. So if network breaks down, you'll bear with me. I'm in a car and I'll stop the video and then I'll make my presentation. Yes, as a person who has lived with HIV for a long period of time, we have gone through a lot. At the beginning of 2021, there was no data to tell the state of people living with HIV as regards to COVID vaccination and infection. So by mid-2021, several studies showed that low CD4 count cells in people living with HIV is associated with blunted human response to COVID. Now that clinicians now know what to do with us people living with HIV with low CD4 count. They are mindful of this vulnerability and steps must be taken prior to vaccination. And this is something really very important because at the coming of COVID-19, we didn't know, does a person living with HIV need a vaccine? And when he takes a vaccine, does it work very well with his medications? But these studies actually indicated. Studies also indicated that the risk to SARS-CoV-2 infection is almost the same as you, a person living with HIV, but it becomes more deadly to a person living with HIV with low CD4 count. We didn't have that, but because of research, we got it. The second amazing research outbreak, which I want to share with you, is called the Dapivrin Vagina ring. It is 2020-2021 when we received this amazing news about this prevention intervention called the Dapivrin Vagina ring. This is a product a woman can insert in her private part, and it stays there for 1 month to help her not to get HIV infection through sexual practice. Why this intervention when we have several other interventions that are working, like the condom, pre-exposure prophylaxis? Why waste resources and energy into a Dapivrin vagina ring? Yes, we need it because it's a woman-centered control of prevention. All the prevention tools that we have are basically managed by a man. For instance, when your woman wants to protect herself in an African context, there is no way she can do it because all the prevention tools are managed by you, a man. So this vaginal ring is basically for a woman to control. In African context, when a man says no condom, it will be no condom. You as a woman, you have nothing to do. But when this ring comes, it will be a centered tool for a woman to control herself. Yes, and actually you can tell the biggest burden of infection lies on the women of Africa. So this tool will basically help them. I thought that was another great news. Now, there are 37 million people living with HIV and 28 of them are taking daily antiretroviral therapy, which has always been a big challenge. Personally, I've taken medication since the year 1998. More than 2 decades taking medications, but I'm facing a lot of challenge. These medications are sour, they are toxic, they are hard to access, the adherence issues is all over the world. So researchers, like they did on family planning 25 years ago, went back to the drawing board, and now they have introduced what they called long-acting agents, which we hope will be game changers to the response. One of the drugs that they discovered is called Cabenova, a combination long-acting injection containing cabotegravir and Dapivrin. This intervention showed that safety and efficacy for it to take it for 1 month is equally the same as taking it for 2 months. So in simple community terms, it means that now there is a possibility of me not taking medications every day. I take Cabenova for 1 month or 2 months, I get that injection, and I stay without medications for 2 months or 1 month. That is amazing. As you remember, we have over 3 million young children living with HIV all over the world, and are facing a lot of challenge taking this medication every day. And we hope when the intervention comes, it will basically start with the children, and that will really be very amazing. Then there is another amazing news about long-acting, a new drug called lenapacavir that was discovered by Gilead Science and its partner. With this long-acting therapy, you don't take medications for 6 months. So you take 2 injections for a year. Every 6 months, you are injected, you go and have fun, come back after 6 months, and you are injected with lenapacavir. Go and move out and have fun. So that was amazing, and it's still going. It has been up the first stage of research and second stage. It has been successful, and it's now going on the stage of approval. But the first one, which I mentioned, Cabenova, is already in Uganda, and it's under review by NDA, which is National Drug Authority. Then there is another one called Instravil. This is just going to be an implant. So you can see amazing things with prevention and treatment. Instead of taking medications every day, you just have an implant in your arm, and it releases the drug slowly every day, slowly, so that you don't have to take this medication I take every day. And we think that is also amazing. Now, billions of dollars have been invested ever since the response came into vaccine research. But up to now, we have not discovered a potent vaccine. Why? Basically because this virus we are dealing with is lethal. It changes itself every day. It mutates. It changes its tweaks. It changes its color. So it's really very, very hard to attack. That's why scientists are facing it rough. Last year, we had so much hope in the Imbokodo study. This Imbokodo study it was a vaccine study, but then we had disappointing results that actually in this study, the product was very safe, but it was not efficacious. To take you back, this Imbokodo study started in 2017, recruiting 26,000 participants between the age of 18 and 35 age. And were given this product to tell whether they can be protected from not getting HIV. But as it turned out, the safety was paramount, was important, was great, safety was scored, but efficacy was not scored. So we lost it. Now, as quickly as possible, I want to go to my last presentation. As a cure advocate, I want to tell you that there is amazing research and news around the HIV cure intervention. And as we speak now, 5 people have been cured of HIV. The 3 people have been cured through a stem cell transplant. But of recent, news brought an amazing step of 2 women being cured of HIV without a stem cell transplant. Now, as an HIV advocate, I was impressed with this news. And there are several studies being done to make sure that we have a cure of HIV. And I want to quickly take you through these strategies. One of them is called shock and kill. And they are moving closer to the cure. Shock and kill, researchers are trying to shock the virus from the reservoir. We know very well that the ARVs we take every day actually kill the virus. But it kills it in the blood and clears it in the blood. But some HIV escape and hide in the reservoir, in your bone marrow, in that solution between your bones. The ARVs cannot reach there. So what researchers have revised is to revise a strategy called shock and kill, an intervention that can penetrate into the bone marrow, shock the virus out of the bone marrow, and come into the blood so that the ARVs can kill it, because we know the ARVs cannot go in the bone marrow. So researchers are really getting close. But their biggest challenge with shock and kill, they need to find what they call a biomarker. A biomarker is like an indicator. Okay, after you have shocked my virus out of the bone marrow and you've put me off treatment, you are not sure whether any virus has remained. So you need an indicator to tell you that actually you have put supercharger off treatment for 6 months, but there is one virus that has remained and it has started producing. So as quickly as possible, put supercharger back on the medication. And we hope when they get a biomarker, we shall be safe. Now, there is another one called block and lock strategy. Instead of shocking the virus from the reservoir of the bone marrow, researchers are saying, don't waste your time. Just identify the reservoir, then block it, cover it there, cover it so that it does not have chance to replicate and come back into the blood. Another strategy is called immunotherapy. And this is really very interesting. This is a strategy where researchers are trying to boost my immune system. Because when HIV enters my body, my immune system fights for some time before I even start medications. But it reaches some time and it's overpowered by the virus. Now, what researchers such as are suggesting and doing is, instead of wasting all these other steps, just boost supercharger's immune system. Get the broadly neutralizing antibodies that can boost his immune system. Get him a therapeutic vaccine that can boost his immune system so that that immune system can be engineered and it can fight the virus. And they're really moving closer with that therapy. So we are really very excited. There are 2 ladies who have been cured by HIV and they are not being shocked and killed, blocked and locked, or immunotherapy, but just their antibodies. They have special antibodies. And these patients are referred to as elite controllers. People who have HIV and don't need medications, the immune system can fight it. Now, what researchers are doing, they are looking at these 2 cases to see if they can take some of their antibodies out and do some copies, duplicate, so that they can be shared with me who doesn't have them. And we think that's really amazing. I'll stop there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I want to thank you, editors all over the world, for the great job that you are doing. We know you are going through a lot. You are going through tear gas, guns, day and night to search for those important stories. And we really appreciate. May God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supercharger. Thank you. As always, very exciting and interesting to listen to you. And thank you for sharing those wonderful insights into current HIV research and for spreading a bit of hope and cheer that, researchers are not asleep, and sooner than later we might have something that works. I was particularly intrigued by the biannual, the 2-year injection that, people could get, and they stop taking all these drugs and walking around with bags of yellow, green, blue drugs all over the place. And I really like that. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we are 4 minutes over the hour. And I think in order to respect our presenters, we need to ask them a few questions or make a few comments so that they feel we were listening. I used to have a teacher in my high school days who used to say, after he has taught and he asks who has a question, and if people didn't ask questions, he said either you understood everything or you didn't understand anything. So in order to demonstrate that we understood some of the things, I think we should ask them a few questions over the next 10 minutes before we close. Who wants to go first? Hillary, I had a small question. You mentioned a lot of challenges that you faced covering COVID-19. I wanted to know, and even Duta perhaps, and other editors here really, I see there is Lynette, I see there is Rod and other people. This is perhaps a question anyone can answer. Was there a silver lining to all those problems? When we look at problems all the time, challenges, was there something positive that happened out of the pandemic for journalism? Was some aspects of your business, did they pick up? When you fired people, did you make more profits, for example? So that is a question I would like to pose to editors as a kickoff, while others prepare to ask their own questions. I'm sure even Supercharger people want to ask him a few questions. Okay, over to you, editors. Please respond to my question as people prepare.
Yes, thank you, Mita, for that question. Of course, with every challenge, there is a silver lining. One is that we learned new information. We also, by the way, discovered that we were very important people in society, because when they locked down, they gave journalists, they locked down and gave a few people the right of passage, even beyond curfew. hours. That included doctors, that included security personnel, and also journalists. So for us in lockdown, we had unlimited access, and we had stickers on our vehicles, and it made people discover how important journalism is in society. When others couldn't move, past curfew, for us we could move anytime. It also, okay, we didn't make profits even through the lockdown, but after the lockdown, we have started to recover. That's why we brought back. We didn't lay off people. Everyone who was on forced leave came back, except those who are annoyed. Why me on forced leave, or those who eventually got better jobs. But the business is recovering because there is hunger, there is thirst for information. And in our society where social media is where it moves like wildfire, no one trusts it. They still want to read a newspaper, they still want to watch a reputable media house to know, is this true? Is what I've found out on media houses true? So we also now, it also helped us get, what COVID did for media is we can now operate, even if you closed our offices in a political disagreement, we can run a newspaper from our homes, from wherever we are. I am in touch with all journalists. Anywhere we can access the servers at the news. That now we can hold meeting, I mean face to face. We can communicate easily. You put something down, it goes to everybody. We can send our pages or work on them even from up country. You don't have to travel from very far to bring a story. You find it from there and even everything. So it brought this new technology that we are still grappling with, but which is very vital. It also now helps reduce staff and cost.
Hello, have we lost Hillary or is it my network?
Yeah, I had got off, but I'm back.
Okay.
But I've given my
your piece.
silver lining, yes.
Thank
my
you.
Silver lining.
Thank you, Hillary, for that silver lining. Nduta, Lynette, anybody in the room, do you want to say something? Yes, Lynette, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chacha. I think Hillary has said a lot of what has happened, the positive that came out of the pandemic. What I would like to add is the fact that there was a lot of gain on our digital platforms. Not everyone was able to buy print newspaper, but because of the hunger for information, the curiosity around COVID, people were online searching for the truth. And you know, media is one of the trusted institutions, despite the fact that the trust is going a bit down. But we were such a source of information on this pandemic. So there was a lot of clicks on our digital platforms, which therefore was attracting adverts for the media organization. So also because a lot of companies are working from home, so there was no real supply of the physical, the hard copy newspapers. So digital income went up for a lot of us, I can say particularly for our organization. One observation I would like to make, it's not really a question, it's that the pandemic made us ignore some of the issues as newsrooms, some of the issues that were already affecting us. If my memory is clear, I remember COVID came just when we were dealing with the locust, the desert locust invasion. And it even came to a point where it just disappeared, and people said it was the locusts were also working from home or something of that sort, but they disappeared. They were ignored. They stopped becoming a point of concern for many, of course, from the media houses. And so how farmers dealt with that became their personal issues. I think at some point we should review such matters. What happened? Despite the fact that COVID was not killing as many people as certain other things may have been, I think we give too much focus. Of course, it's out of fear for everyone because nobody knew about these things so well. So that's where I saw Alap's media went with we moved together with the worried world, and we ignored certain issues that were already affecting us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you. Nice to see you here and to listen to you. Anybody else who wants to go before we wrap it up? And thank you for your patience. We are 12 minutes on top of the hour, above the assigned time, and I'm happy we are still in the room waiting for a nice wrap up. Somebody else? Going 3? Going 2? Going 1. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for making time to attend this meeting again. You know, a lot of us attend a lot of online meetings, and you never quite know whether or not people will find a topic interesting enough to make time for it. I hope this was useful for you. And I know that most of you are editors. You have an editorial meeting at around this time. And I wish you the very best. I can see, oh, those are hand claps. I wish you the very, very best in your endeavors. And please allow me to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Christoph, thank you. Please share the recording. Asante sana. Good day, everybody.
Chacha, bye.
Thank you, Mita. Have a nice day. Nice to meet you.
Asante sana. Enjoy your day, everyone.